Hi there. Happy
Hi,
Friday.
good to see you. Yes, I am.
No, you're George Friday, but I said Happy Friday.
At the moment, anyway.
You're
I
both.
know. I'm happy at the moment. Yes, that's right. At least for the next hour or so. We made it through another week. I wish I could say that it was a wonderful, perfect week. No.
Yeah, I don't know
But
about.
it is another opportunity for the truth to be revealed, for people's illusions to be shattered, and for people to choose a different way of being in the world. See, that's the good way to think about it. What are our chances? Our chances are we have the chance to peel away what we know is bullshit and create something that's authentic.
That
Wouldn't
is
that
a
be
good
nice?
way to frame it. Yes, every passing news story of garbage is an opportunity for people to be their eyes opened to what's up.
That's right. That's right. It's like, oh yeah, this is more proof of what we know. We know in our bones. We've known in our bones for a long time. So now it's in our face. And it doesn't mean we have to linger or wallow in the crap. Look forward, co create something that's worth having.
Absolutely. Well, let's back up for a
Maybe something we
second. Oh, go ahead.
you gonna tell me something horrible that's going on in the world.
No, I was gonna. Not yet. We'll do
My
that in a
last
second.
hit of the news was watching John Allen.
I
Oh,
was
thank
gonna.
goodness.
I was thinking maybe we should I don't know, introduce ourselves, do the intro, all that sort of stuff. So you're listening to
Oh
Making
yeah.
Sense with
But
Move to
I can see
Amend.
my name down there.
Your name is down there.
Yeah, it is. Although we may not at the moment. Oh, you want me to say it too?
George, we have a
Welcome.
crazy delay.
I'm George Friday. Really? I don't know
Yeah,
what to
I
do
think
about
so.
that. Do you want me
I
to
don't think.
pause?
Yeah, let's both just stop for a sec because I think when I talk, you don't hear me for another couple seconds. Okay, yes, go ahead. Introduce yourself. What you were doing was let's start there.
Okay, great. Okay. Hey there. I'm George Friday. I'm one of the co-founders and current board member of Move to Amend. Really glad you're here. We'll try to make some sense of the world in the next hour. So welcome.
Feel free to let
Kaitlin,
us know
did
who's
you
who.
introduce yourself already?
No, I didn't. I will do that now. But folks can also feel free to introduce yourselves if you want in the chat. We can see, or in the comments on whichever platform you're using. My name's Kaitlin Sopoci-Belknap, and I'm Move to Amend's National Director. And George and I are both co-founders. And I'm in Sacramento, California, where I don't have heat at the moment, but I'm not really complaining because I know that in a lot of the country, not having heat is a lot worse than not having it here. But it is kind of chilly, and I am bundled up in this one room, which is the one room where we have power, but our heater isn't working. And Alfonso is doing our production like normal, and he is in Texas and has been dealing with the situation there. And so just want to give our thoughts and best wishes to everybody in Texas and Louisiana, Mississippi, Oklahoma, and all the rest of the South. I guess Florida also too now is getting it. And hope that people get power soon and help soon. And I'm sorry that our country is such a falling apart mess that we're in the situation that we're in, where people are freezing to death in their homes, which is insane.
Wow.
So,
It's
you're
really
listening.
hard to imagine. So
Is it cold where you are, George? George is in
sorry.
North Carolina.
It's relative. It's probably in the 50s now, which is that's winter here. But this morning it was in the 30s, not freezing, but high 30s, which is cold but not horrible. I didn't have to have on more than one layer. And socks. I had to put on socks. That's serious. For me, it is.
It's all very relative. That's the thing. I saw some
Thanks,
people
people, for
online
putting comments.
I saw people online not really understanding why, people from the Northeast or the Midwest not understanding how people in the South could be, unable to handle a snowstorm. But, we also need to talk about how that everything that's happening is a result of climate change. And this is a, freak storm, unlikely incident. Not only do people not have like the clothing or bedding, but just the infrastructure, the buildings are not equipped to deal with like snow and ice. It's just not supposed to be that kind of weather there. But that's what climate change does. And that's why, it's not about global warming. It is global warming, but the whole right idea that it's, it means that everybody's going to have warmer weather.
But this isn't news. We've known for 20. Weather. That's right. And we've known for decades that this is coming. So every state, every city had the opportunity to prepare in some way to at least put, what are we going to do in the worst case scenario to mitigate harm for people? And, people are clueless. Pipes bursting. Oh, trees fall over and cut out electricity. Oh, well, that's just not retrofitted. Well, we really worked on that I think it was maybe the 70s or 80s. No upgrades since then. Why? Because they didn't want to spend the money. No, I don't want to get started. I'm not going to say a word about
that's
that.
That's
bad choices, people.
So every week on Friday,
who pays the cost?
A couple of us from Move to Amend team up and just kind of do our best to walk through the news. We started this program when the pandemic first started happening and everybody was on lockdown, and there was so much. And I was looking at an article by Kaitlin Johnstone that I didn't actually finish this morning, so I want to go back to it. But she was talking about how, the real struggle here is over the propaganda and the messages that people are being told about who's to blame, what's to blame, why the breakdown is happening, because everybody at this point is feeling it. You'd have to be closing your eyes and la 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 really forcefully to not notice that our society, especially in this country, but it's not just here, is, our systems are collapsing and are melting down before our eyes. And so the struggle is to help people understand why and how. And there is a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot of deflection. There is a lot of scapegoating. And so we wanted to start doing this program every week as an opportunity for us to connect with you, our Move to Amend supporters, and for us to piece it together, because the real story underneath almost all of this is we live in a system of corporate rule. There are a small number of people who benefit from everything, whether it's good or bad news. And we need democracy as the antidote to that. And so we try to kind of do that in real time every week.
Yes. And that last part, Kaitlin, and I think you're right about the time delay, because I could see that your sound and your face didn't quite match up for a minute there. But I do want to encourage us, both you and I and our people listening, thanks people for listening, to spend less focus on who's to blame and the blaming part than the what are we going to do about it and how do we make sure we never, ever get in this place again. Because there are many, many things that support the current status quo culture of many suffer and few benefit. And part of what the culture has set up for us is this blaming thing, where we figure a lot of energy towards Who are we going to blame? And then once that blame has been assigned, nothing happens. No change happens. No shift in the culture or the status quo happens. It's just then people get to point a finger and say, oh, well, it's these people or that group. So, yes, we want to find out how do we get here and what do we do about it. And certainly, if there's someone to hold accountable, that would be fantastic. Wonderful, beautiful. But how often does that happen? Y'all just have to look at the dadgum impeachment shit to know you can't hold these fools accountable. So, absent a firing squad, how do we collectively build the power to get what we need and not recreate the crap that is killing us right now? Because it is.
Well,
So that's
and
what's up.
I mean, what I try to remember is that even though there are some particular individuals who do need to be held accountable and who make my blood boil, like what this week, Ted Cruz going to Mexico and just leaving his state to freeze to death, literally. And we could go on about.
Oh, he was just accompanying his daughters. It was just him riding with his daughters. He was chaperoning these teenage girls. That was really important.
He had to be a good, responsible parent. He couldn't just leave them off to Mexico alone. Right. Well, but at the same time, really, what's responsible is the system. And so, you could replace any of these individuals and still be in the same mess if we don't change the system. So, that's where.
Yes. That's what's really to blame. And that system goes back to like hundreds of years. That system has been to blame and been in place for hundreds and hundreds of years, many generations, to the point where so much of the way it operates is absorbed into our being. And we expect a certain way of sharing information or taking in information or processing things together, which is why this time on Fridays at 3 is worthwhile, because it's a chance to say, oh, wait a minute, let's step outside of the status quo conditioning and brainwashing. Let's have our eyes wide awake and talk some truth to each other.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's what we do. So,
sorry, your name is so small,
there's a lot of people on this planet right now.
Go ahead.
I'm
Go
small.
Ahead.
That doesn't happen often.
Not you.
So I know that for many people, they're like, oh my God, Trump's gone. Life is great. We don't have anything to worry about. Let's lean back. Let's relax and just give it over to Uncle Joe. How's that going, Kaitlin?
No, you're good. You're good. Sorry. I was trying to deal with
What do you think of that?
I didn't hear what you said. We're having so many technical difficulties here. It's very hard to have a conversation when we both are hearing each other at the same time. Or we're not realizing what, I can't hear you. And anyway. We'll deal. Maybe I should come out and come back in.
I will repeat myself. I don't mind repeating myself. And I would type it up that you could read it, but I don't want to do that. I am thinking about people who are so overjoyed to have Trump out of office, and they feel like, they breathe a sigh of relief that there's a new administration. So they feel like, we can lean back. We could take a breath. We don't have to worry about things now because Uncle Joe got it. I wondered what you think about that.
Okay, yeah. Well, a few different things. I mean, we can talk in a minute maybe about some of the specifics for why we should not let up, but we did want to mention and underscore that we have been hearing a lot of that. And so we sent out a message to our list, and I'm not sure if it's up on our site yet, but we should make sure that it gets up there if it isn't yet, an email that we sent out yesterday, just kind of trying to make real clear for folks. So Move to Amend has been around for 10 years, and we've been doing this work against corporate rule, not as Move to Amend, but those of us who involved with Move to Amend since well before that, I don't know, at this point we're going on 25 years. And we want to be clear that no matter who's like in charge in the White House, in Congress, in, you know, any other level of government, our job is to stand up for we the people and to fight for democracy and to end corporate rule. And unfortunately, both
Word.
of the two political parties are instruments of corporate rule. They help facilitate corporate rule. They have sort of different flavors of how they do that. But our political system is a system that props up corporate rule, and the Democrats and the Republicans are not just complicit in that, they help make that, manifest that reality every day. So our job hasn't changed.
That's right.
Now that Trump is not the president. And the reality is that the system has not changed now that Trump is not the president. And so we're continuing on, and some folks have seemed a little bit surprised or confused that, you know, we got to give Biden more time or this or that or the other thing. And the reality is giving Biden time and space just means the suffering continues for longer.
Gives him more space to do his crap. Yeah.
Right, exactly.
It doesn't mean he's an evil person. It means he's part of a system that's been well established that you cannot buck. And if he tried to buck it, they would destroy him because that's the way it's set up. So we can try to hold them to their own lies because, okay, you say you care about people, Medicare for all. Nothing else works. That thing that they're talking about, something where insurance companies still get paid. If the insurance companies, if the corporations are making a buck out of it, it is not in our best interest.
Right.
So when Reverend Barber and Reverend Lee Theo Harris with the Poor People's Campaign talk about things like Medicare for all and a system that is, I'm trying to think of the right words because it sounds so good. It's something on site. It's like, you know, I need medical attention. I go get it. It's paid for right immediately. I don't have to go through a bunch of stuff. I don't have to sign up for a program or make sure Blue Cross and Blue Shield is getting paid at point of service or something like that, which is basically Medicare for all, everybody in, nobody out. You don't die because you can't pay for medicine. This is some simple shit. Like you shouldn't die because you can't pay your electricity or your rent. We can do better than this. That's where our energy goes instead of figuring out who to blame or worrying about that. They're not human beings. They're some other creature. They're zombies. They've been zombified by corporations, and we can't mess with them. We don't have to, cut their heads off, but we don't have to let them in the house either. Meanwhile, let's do what we need to take care of each other and the planet. And that's not difficult. We just have to make sure these corporations aren't in our pocket. Not trying to put their hands in our pockets all the time.
That's the tragedy and also the potential opportunity about all of this is that the solutions that are needed don't actually need to be invented. We know what to do. I mean, the deregulation of Texas's power is not the solution, right? Collectivizing, public ownership, decentralization. I mean, we could go through every list of every problem, healthcare, Medicare for all. In fact, every other first world country employs it and it works well, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So on one hand, that, it's such a tragedy that the solutions actually are clear as day and right there available to us. This isn't a
glaring.
Imagine it. Right, figure it out. And yet at the same time, they're not implemented because we do not have a democracy. We do not have a system of government that serves the people. Our government serves a small number of people through their corporations for the most part. And, we've seen that with the pandemic and the fact that the rich have grown enriches astronomically to the point that it's incomprehensible for us to even understand and fathom how much money Jeff Bezos or Elon Musk, etc., have. Literally, they will never be able to spend it. Nobody in their family would be able to spend all that money. Nobody needs that much money. And yet that's what our system does in response to a crisis, is enriches people who don't need it, and in order to do that, steals it from people who are barely getting by already. And so in terms of some of the news from this week that we want to make sure that people are aware of, and it doesn't help us to just sit back. It doesn't help us to, like George said, lean back and just relax. And anybody who feels like that's something that you can do right now, you're not understanding the desperation and the on the edgeness that others are feeling. And so you got to figure out how to get in touch with that, because this is not a time to relax because there's a Democrat in charge of the White House and they've got the majority in Congress. And for example, Biden said this week that to governors that they should expect that $15 minimum wage isn't going to happen. He doesn't see that being possible. He also has made clear that
it's not. Let's pause for a second. Okay.
Yeah, because I was going to
So my read of when they say it's not possible, that means because X corporation isn't going to get as much money or isn't going to be able to exploit the workers. When they say we can't pay Medicare for all, it's because, oh, my boys over here at Pfizer ain't going to get paid the way they need to. So when they say not possible and not feasible, dig into that. When we say you can't lean back, you can't relax, it doesn't mean to raise your anxiety level. It doesn't mean to feel like you're in trauma. Because, yeah, I know it might feel like you're in trauma. You're going to be all right. Stay right there. Stay there, and then figure out, how do we push what we need? How do we make sure people are taken care of? So when he says, I don't think it's possible, that means I don't think politically we can sell this because our funders are not happy with it. When it's not possible, that means by our funders. Just to make sure we're paying attention to what the real double speak is. Double speak like okay.
Yeah, thank you for underscoring that and making that clear. And so, that's unacceptable. That is unacceptable. And so then that leaves us, well, what do we do with that? Because the minimum wage should be way more than $15 an hour in terms of, people's needs and the cost of survival in this country at this point. We all know that the wages have been artificially depressed as a result of policy for corporate leadership.
Decades.
And so $15 is kind of catching up, but it's already too little too late. Not even enough there. And so for us to accept that that they're not going to try and push it in this COVID relief, and it's going to be, maybe sometime down the line, is outrageous and obviously something that we cannot abide by. And so
even though they're worthless,
space doesn't help. Go ahead.
Yeah, don't give them space. Call your senators, call your reps, write their offices, demand to have a Zoom meeting with them where you fill that little Zoom room with people from your church or your street or your block or your gym, and call them to task. Yeah, you'll only get their staff person, but do it again in another few weeks. Become the burr in their side and make them know that you are relentless. You are not going to let them get a moment's rest until they do the right thing. And all kinds of ways that you can disturb and disrupt their business as usual. Disrupt. Don't make it comfortable for them. I can think of all kinds of things. I don't know if I want to say them out loud on this in case somebody comes to get me. But, there's all kinds of ways you can cause a little bit of a fuss, show up at their offices, big old caravans with people, block their parking lots with gurneys. I'm gonna shut up now. Paul's has
Well,
written something here I can't
some
really
of
read.
those,
What is it?
yeah, it's pretty little. Some of our strategies, some of the strategies were employed last year, and I think we need to revisit them. I mean, I think, it's time to be regularly outside of their homes, in, the sidewalk, on the streets, making noise at all hours. Props to the folks from Sunrise who were, on Mitch McConnell's lawn in the middle of the night, making it so he couldn't sleep. I mean, these are the kinds
Yes.
of tactics we do need to escalate our tactics, right? We can't, I mean, start with the Zoom calls to Senate offices, but if they're not listening to that, then, we're still struggling. We're still trying to get by. We're still at the mercy of a pandemic and an economic meltdown and getting no relief, no leadership from the people, the supposed leaders of this country. They need to feel it. They need to hear it. They need to see it. They need to, be uncomfortable, as George said. Those are the only tactics that work. And so we've got to figure out how to
And they don't
them.
work, it takes them a while to work. The
Right.
results
You
aren't
can't just do
immediate.
it one time.
So you got to do it this week and in another 2 weeks from now and 2 weeks from then, and then change it up so it looks different, but it's the same tactics. You can hold educational flyer distributions at federal buildings. That includes post offices and other federal buildings where you can distribute information to people who are going in and out. You can do this in a really COVID safe way. So that's what you do
Just
when
for
you're not
example,
leaning back.
for context, I was reminded recently of the fact that the Montgomery bus boycott, which we all kind of vaguely know about as a key moment that helped move towards ending segregation, a key, hot hand moment. That boycott was 381 days. 381 days that people figured out how to get themselves to work, how to avoid using, and the bus now, there's a lot of people who maybe would be like, bus boycott, but it was the essential way that people needed to get to the grocery store, that people needed to get to work, that people were able to get around. And they organized alternative ways to do that. They drove each other. Then in the face of, police trying to take away people's driver's license so that they couldn't drive each other, targeting Black folks so that they couldn't support each other. And yet and still, they figured out how to keep it going for 381 days. That's the kind of discipline, that's the kind of commitment, and that's the kind of escalation that we have to figure out what is the appropriate target and methods and tactics that we would use today. A bus boycott probably ain't it, but what is the commiserate response to this kind of a situation, and how do we sustain it, and how do we support each other through sustaining it, and then how do we continue to escalate if they continue to ignore us?
Yes. And it's important as we're planning those different levels of escalation, because they need to be multi-layered, relentless, regular, and really, really disciplined. But as we're planning that, we have to put in place, how are we taking care of each other? How are we going to make sure that if this wave of people get swept to jail, that someone is replacing them, and someone is making sure their kids are going to be all right tonight, and someone's making sure their mom is going to get her Medicare or her medical needs met. There's all these layers of mutual aid and support we need to build at the same time we're building resistance. Because we have, yes, there's not really a substantial difference between the administration, but there's a word for the optics. The Democrats don't want to look as fascist as the Republicans. That means we've got until the midterm elections to publicly push them to at least recognize human rights and what they think of as democracy, their lies, hold them to their lies. Their lies are they're the party of the people, and they are compassionate and progressive. And look at all these people of color, Joe put in his cabinet. Okay, fine, cool. So given that, that means that this is our time to both build mutual aid and support each other and put in place what we need if and when the systems that we are pushing against push back or topple altogether. So that as we're escalating, we're also making sure, oh, here is the food bank that we're going to be able to use. And here's the ride service we got. Oh, we got these white boys with ties that they can drive. And police ain't going to mess with them. They're going to drive the cars. You see what I'm saying? So that we're building our protection as we're building our resistance. It doesn't mean things won't
Absolutely.
go bad, but it means that we're paying attention.
I can't, Alfonso, I can't put up people's comments like I normally can because I'm using my phone here. But I see, others suggesting things like that. So feel free to put those up. And if other people have suggestions for tactics and actions or ways to support actions, please go ahead and say them. And let's get, the conversation.
I see a question here. I could read it from Lynn Litchfield. You want me to read this question, Kaitlin?
Yeah, go ahead.
Although
yes,
I think, my answer is probably not the right one. Okay. How do we require major corporations, filthy, lots of money corporations to practice equitable pay for their workers when the government has no leverage over how private corporations manage their payroll? And obviously they won't step up without being required to. Unions. Hey, I know I'm in the South, but that's all I know. Union. Did you hear the question, Kaitlin?
And our government does have leverage. I mean, the minimum wage, but also, we could pass. There's nothing in the Constitution, for example, that prohibits us from passing laws that actually set a cap on how much somebody can make, or that says
Bottom.
that CEOs cannot make more than 10 times the lowest paid employee. Now, I understand that we live in a country where that is like antithesis of the idea of freedom and capitalism. So there's obviously some cultural work that needs to happen too. But just to be clear, our government does have authority to have that kind of leverage over corporations, whether it's minimum wages or maximum wages, or more direction about how to equitably pay people. What is lacking is a political will on the part of the leadership of the two parties that run our government. So how do we do that? I mean, part of it is we demand it. Part of it is that we help shift the conversation. Part of it is that we make clear how much billions of dollars is. I mean, I say this because it's like, do we actually understand how much money that is? How it's so much more than any human being could possibly need. And so when individuals are paid this amount of money annually as salaries, or as part of their options, how outrageous that is. And we need to help Americans understand that values of everyone having their needs met is what makes a happy and healthy society, not values of the greediest people making bank and throwing a match in the house as they run out the door with all of the resources, which is what we have now.
That, the word obscenity doesn't strike much of a definition for me, except when I think about that much money. That to me is just obscenity, all caps. Having billions and billions of dollars is truly obscene.
Oh, it's sick.
It doesn't mean the person and the culture that that encourages it. Come on, what kind of values are we talking about?
Yeah. I saw Andrew asking, but how would government enforce this? Again, government actually has these tools. There's nothing in the Constitution that, for example, says that corporations have a right to exist. Corporations that break the law could be dissolved, eliminated, assets distributed back to
Out the
shareholders,
door.
company dead, death penalty for companies that break the law. Again, what's lacking? The political will, not the authority.
Mm-mm.
So the way that political will gets generated is from us, is from the people, demanding it, requiring it, and having accountability when it isn't met. That's what it comes down to. It's not about the fact that we don't have the mechanisms to do this. It's about the fact that we don't demand and force. The consent of the governed is a real thing. They have definitely figured out how to manipulate the hell out of the consent of the governed, but it still is the key piece that this only works because we allow it to continue.
We let them.
We could withdraw that consent.
Yes.
It would have to be organized. It would have to be powerful. It would have to be cohesive, and it would have to be disciplined. But all of that is actually possible.
That's actually quite encouraging. That might be the best message of this week, is how possible it is to withdraw consent. I am not in agreement with what you're doing, and I want you to know it. You know?
And
I would spray paint that on the wall.
I will physically stop you from continuing to the best of my ability. And everybody maybe has different risks associated with that. And those need to be taken into account. But there are a lot of people who I know are outraged in this country who have the material capacity to risk more than we are risking to fight for systemic change.
So Lynn wrote another question here that I know Greg Coleridge is here. Hey, Greg. And Greg, you're going to write the answer to this question of Lynn's, because I think I know it, but I don't want to be off. Would this, and I guess this would be our getting our government to use its authority on our behalf and stop corporations from paying people a pittance and make them pay the wages that they should. So what Lynn says is, would this integrate with the antitrust laws? So, not that you know all about antitrust laws, Greg, but I know you know more than I. So I don't think, I'm not going to say anything. I'm just going to say what Greg would type a response. And I think, again, if we build the will and we make the demand, then we demand what we need. Corporations have to be accountable to we the people. They can get our consent to act. They do not have any rights. They only have privileges that we might choose to grant them. And if we don't grant those privileges, they better stay in their dadgum lane. And that would be a lovely
Well,
a
and
lovely
just to
thing.
be clear, there's also precedent for this. Not that there was some magical time where democracy worked in this country, because the mode of choice to deny democracy was to deny people their human being status or their personhood.
Right.
But the reality is that in terms of corporations, for the first 100 years, 50, 75, 100 years of this country's history, corporations had to serve the public in order to come into being in the first place. And then that was a litmus test that they were measured against when it was decided whether to extend their charter and whether they would continue to exist or not. And corporations that were determined to be violating the public good were dissolved. And there were numerous ways that corporations were held accountable. And so again, just to make clear, I mean, obviously times have changed. Corporations are now the dominant economic institution. And at the time that I'm talking about, the slave plantation was the dominant economic institution. So there would need to be adjustments to our society in a number of different ways in terms of our dependence of corporations, and corporations being, you know, the main way that the economy works. But that all could be done if we didn't have the principle of, instead of serving the public good, corporations need to maximize profit for shareholders, which is now what the purpose of a corporation is. And that comes from the law. And that's why Move to Amend focuses on the law, because all of this law follows culture, and the culture is shaped by the law. And these two things, we need to have agency to address both of them. Otherwise, we end up in a society like this one, which is grossly perverted, not serving people. You know, we have one of the most unhappy and poor mental health, physical health countries of anyone, certainly with the resources that we have, because we're all out of whack.
Can I get you to pause for a second? I want to read Greg's responses to Lynn. He said there would certainly be challenges to antitrust laws, I guess based on corporations having personhood. And he also says that economic cooperatives and unions have been challenged under the Sherman Act Antitrust Occupy the Need Act. Sherman Antitrust Act, not the Need Act. I don't know the Need Act, so there you are. I hope that's adequate, Lynn. Sorry to cut you off. You were getting a good roll going there for a good rant. You were wrapping up to a good rant. I can tell you rolling uphill, heading for that good rant.
I could see Greg's little picture on there, so I knew we were going to come back to that. I'm sorry I can't see the comments more effectively.
Well, I wanted to read it while I could, because I knew I wouldn't remember it, and there's not a way otherwise.
Well, is there other stuff that you want to talk about? I do think that we should give people an update on what's going on with Move to Amend specifically, and what we've been working on over the last week. And
please do. And is there anything exciting coming up? Some good Move to Amend opportunity coming up? Are we going to have a webinar or a movie night or a groovy call or something that'll be fabulous for people? Besides next Friday, which is always fabulous.
What if the answer is no? No, just kidding. Okay, well, let's back up for 1 second and just fill people in. So what we decided to do, so last year was, you know, pretty tough year to figure out how to reach Congress people, right? As we're all like insulated in our houses. So we didn't really make a lot of progress. So we decided that this year we really wanted, we didn't make a lot of progress in growing our number of co-sponsors. Let's say it that way.
Okay.
So we decided this year that we want to kind of like front load that aspect of the work that Move to Amend does. We know that the amendment is going to be reintroduced in the House. Right now they're up to 26
Do we know when?
Joint resolutions. We're waiting for them. Sorry?
Do we know when it's going to be reintroduced? Do we know when the bill is going to be reintroduced?
No, there's no way to know that. What we know is that it will be reintroduced when they get to 48, so that we can have the same number again. Because we've had this number now this will be the third Congress, and for continuity and organizing sake, it's worth it for us to stick with the number 48. So that means, though, that it will be introduced when they get to 48. Right now they're on 26. Just for context, last time it was introduced on February 22nd. So they were all the way at 48 on February 22nd last Congress. They are very far away from that. So it's still a ways to go, but we're not letting that delay us. We're going ahead and securing what's called initial co-sponsors, so the list of people who will be right there at the beginning now, and our goal is to get 100 by the end of next month, whether it's introduced or not. And it makes it a little bit harder for us if the amendment hasn't been introduced, but that's okay. We're just rolling with it. So we are at 33, I think it is right now. I don't have the list right in front of me. I had to close that document.
How many did we have last time?
It's not public because this isn't like, we were at 75 last time when the Congress ended. So every new Congress, they all need to be reintroduced. So there are 68 people who are still in Congress who were co-sponsors last time. But they all have to recommit. We got to talk to them. We got to do all that work. It's a real pain in the butt, actually. It makes it harder to kind of just keep going. So that's what we've mostly been working on for this month is having those conversations, with staff turnover, whatever. They've been a little bit distracted in Congress with what happened on the 6th and all since then. And so it's been a little bit even hard. Maybe that's part of why they're not introducing as many bills. I don't know what they're doing. So that's what we're focusing on. And we have a list of about 130 people. If you go to movetoamend.org/117 campaign, which is on the bottom of the screen here, you can see who our targets are. You can see if your representative is one of them, and you can help us meet with them, which is what we need to do basically in this last month of our first quarter campaign is have meetings with all of the offices that have not committed yet and make the case to them. And if they still don't come on board, then we need to escalate. That's the way organizing works. First you ask nicely, then you ask a little bit more urgently, then you give them another opportunity, and then you carry on. So we expect the escalation more to happen in the later part of the year after they've all been given a polite opportunity first. And so that's the phase that we're in at the moment. So that is what we're up to. And, since there's so many people or so many districts that are targets, there's no way to read through them. So I ask everybody to go to the site that's listed down there and check out and see whether your rep is on the list, and then help us figure out how to get them on board if they're not already.
I want to share an idea a friend of mine who's a teacher had, and I don't know if I'm going to do this, but other people might. I might. But, with places where they're not having school live and it's online virtual school, it's really more work for teachers. They're overwhelmed and kind of burning out. If you have a way in through people on a school board or the administrators of a certain school system or specific school, you can offer to do a lecture for a class. And apparently there are teachers who would love that, for you to take a session, or maybe I'll do every Tuesday for 45 minutes on civics and the Constitution and democracy. And they'll be like, oh, thank God I get 30 minutes or 45 minutes where I don't have to be, dealing with the virtual students. So just sharing that, someone said they thought it would be great. And he was looking for people to fill some of the classes. This is somebody who does history and it's not civics. Apparently in this school system, they didn't teach civics anymore, but something that's close to that would fall into our categories in terms of democracy and the history of the U.S. and the lies that have been told about the history of the U.S. as opposed to reality. So I think there's some people that might be listening to this that would be perfect for that. They know somebody who teaches XYZ at school, and they could go there and say, listen, our Move to Amend affiliate is happy to do a lecture a week for a month or 6 weeks. And that would be fantastic. Just creative ways, thinking about creative ways that you can keep the pressure on in different ways, just making sure you're still resisting. Well, this was more fun than I thought it would be, Kaitlin.
There are a number of our... I'm glad. I feel irritated about the sound, and it sounds like there have been some folks who kind of had to deal with that too. So apologies, Doug, you in particular. There's nothing we can do about our sound here, but we'll try and keep that.
Has
we'll
this
look
happened
into
before?
whether there is some way to balance out the levels. To me, George sounds not that I know of. I mean, sometimes there's issues that are different than this. Technology, you know, is a little bit fickle, and we're not a television station, so we don't have all the
It's
bells and
not
whistles.
perfect. We're not expecting perfection. Yep. And, it's not like we have something that costs tons of money that is supposed to do miraculous things. So, is there anything coming up we need to let people know about besides get your reps to sign on?
Main thing, the main thing is that we're trying to turn the 28th of every month into a day of action, and on the 28th of this month, which is on a weekend, I think it's maybe a Sunday, we're going to be asking folks to record video messages to your representatives, asking them to sign on. So look for the details on that. There's not we will be sending out an email over this week with kind of how you can get involved in that and do that. So making sure that you're on our email list, signing the motion to amend is the best way to do that. The other thing, so as we are targeting these different districts, I have to say that there are some places where we do not have, hold on one second, heat turned off. We do not have very many people who have signed the move to amend petition, especially relative to how many there should be. So what I mean by that is in cities is really where it's like small towns, we kick ass, we have, or small cities even. There are, thousands of people in each district who have signed the petition, and that's a meaningful case that we can make to the legislators to say, this many thousands of people in your district have specifically asked you to support this amendment. But then in places like New York City or LA or Chicago, we don't have those kinds of numbers. I'm working on one district in New York City that we have only 100 people and we only have about 40 email addresses. And this is like in the heart of like the Bronx, where there are literally millions of people. So one thing that I want to ask everybody is to help us get more people to sign the move to amend petition by sharing it with your friends and family and everybody you know, posting it to social media. So Alfonso put the link up there, movetoamend.org/motion. If you haven't signed that yet, please go ahead and do it. And then once you do, it'll take you to a link that you can share it with your friends. And if you want, that can be tagged back to you. And we do have some, prizes and rewards for people who recruit. I think the minimum is 10 to get a prize, but the more you recruit, you can get other prizes too. And so please help us spread the word. It's really important. This is the way to get the message to Americans, because obviously Move to Amend is not really going to get, a headline in corporate media. But in addition to that, we use that as leverage to Congress members and state officials as well to say, your constituents want to see this. This is how many people we have backing up this meeting that we're having right now. And so it's important. So please sign the motion to amend. And other than that, if you want to plug in with the work that we're doing right now, it's focused on the We the People Amendment and getting it introduced in the House. But later on in the year, we'll be working on the Senate. We'll also be doing some work around the People's Constitution Project and furthering that so that we can talk about the other ways that our Constitution needs to be changed beyond addressing corporate personhood and money in politics. But, there's so much more that we need to have a functioning, healthy, strong democracy. And that does start with our Constitution. And there are not very many people who kind of look at it that way or talk about it that way. But that's at the end of the day where all of our vision for the society that we want needs to be encoded. Otherwise, like people have brought up here, our elected officials can sort of go the way of the wind, and they don't necessarily actually have to embody our values in the legislation that they do. So if our Constitution makes more clear what the instruction is for what kind of society we want, what rights people have, and they go beyond just our free speech rights and into economic rights, then we would have a much healthier society and country. Thanks,
Without a
Paul.
doubt.
Appreciate that. Anything else that you want to add, George?
No, just that it's a delight to know and work with you guys. And I wish I'd had just a percentage of billions so that I could make a huge donation to Move to Amend. And hey, Linda. Linda's only about an hour away from me right now. I'm in Chatham County, North Carolina. And in the old days, I could jump in the car and we could go have coffee this afternoon or tonight. But it's not like that now.
Let's see.
There's no way I
can't
would
read
leave the
what's on
house.
this question. Can you?
She says, I do, we know, I do, we don't know just what to say to people when we ask them to sign. Is there info for us anywhere? There's a toolkit, Kaitlin,
Yeah,
to get people to sign the petition.
MoveToAmend.org. Yeah, if you go to movetoamend.org / I think it's petitioning. Let me look. See if that's right. Nope. That's wrong. MoveToAmend.org / petition is where you can get the link to sign it. You can get a paper petition, which we aren't using so much these days, but there's also people can text to sign. And then there's some talking points, and it specifically says what to say. I mean, for many, 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 many people, it speaks for itself, you know, the motion to amend. But if you need a little bit of, you know, some prompts and talking points, then all that info is at movetoamend.org / petition. And the petition, just to make clear, says, we the people of the United States of America reject the U.S. Supreme Court Citizens United ruling and other related cases and move to amend our Constitution to firmly establish that money is not speech and that human beings, not corporations, are persons entitled to constitutional rights. I haven't actually run into very many people who don't just say, hell yeah, when they read that. So the good news is that our issue is one of the most straightforward, common sense, cuts across all kinds of other political divides that people might have. And really, it's only extremely wealthy corporate owners who disagree with us, and everybody else is on board. So it's just a matter of telling them that we exist. All right.
Excellent.
Well, I think that we should wrap it up. But thank you guys for joining us. Sorry that we had kind of some technical difficulties. Next week, I think that the folks who will be on here are Daniel and Jessica, so our program director and one of our board members who's currently running for state office in California. So maybe he can talk a little bit about his experience there or whatever. And you can always find us at movetoamend.org. If you're tuning into this not live and you have questions, you can also type those questions in the comments on whichever platform you're using, and we monitor those and we will respond to. So let us know if there's anything else that you want to know about, but please support Move to Amend. And the biggest way you can do that is spread the word and become a monthly donor. So if you haven't done those two things, then you've got homework for this weekend.
Great. Thanks so much,
right.
Kaitlin. Thanks, Alfonso. Bye,
Thank
everybody.
You, Alfonso. Stay warm down there in Texas.
Take care of yourselves.
Stay safe.
Bye.